Welcome to Maxs Garaj Mahal. Today we're going to do something we've been needing to do for quite a while, and that is install a fuel tank sender. And this sender will send signals to the fuel gauge, which we installed in a much earlier video when we did the ergonomic 2.0 dash. Now, what we're going to use a rivet nut gun and rivet nuts along with some stainless steel screws to put that in. This is a rivet gun, and it's for putting rivet nuts in. It's not a standard rivet gun. And this is what it's going to do on the back right here. So you're going to drill a hole, you're going to put the rivet nut through your two items. If it's just one, it's one. All we're going to do here is one. And you're going to push this through, you're going to screw this in here, you're going to push this through your tank. Let's say this particular spot right here is the tank. Then you're going to tighten this gun, and it's going to squeeze that inside up until it makes a flange both on the top as well as on the bottom. Because when this pulls this up, it's going to squeeze this and make that lower flange. That'll seal up the tank. Then we're going to use, and this is what the little rivet nuts look like right here. Then we're going to use a stainless steel bolt, socket head bolt, which looks real clean and neat, and that'll keep them from rusting. So, in order to do this, we're going to pull the sticks in, get them out of the way. We're going to pull the bolts that removes the fenders. Before we remove the fender on the left side, you got to remove the fuel tank cap. Pull the cap up, squeeze together the retainer, pull it out, lay it over the side. Remove the tanks. On this particular mower, it's got 6 bolts. Yours should have 4. On this side, it's got 5. Yours should have 4. So, now I'll have 6 when I get through and put it back together. Once the fenders are removed, put your gas cap back on your fuel tank temporarily. So, then you're going to go in, you're going to pull the 4 bolts that holds down the fuel tank. You're going to disconnect the fuel line. Squeeze off the fuel line before you disconnect it. And then on this particular mower, again, if you watched my videos, you know I installed a fuse panel because I've got so many things on this, like tail lights, strobe flashlights for safety, 3 different sets of switches over here. We have a USB charge port and a voltmeter. So we've got to disconnect all those things, but I put all my disconnects with string relief and connectors, so when they go together, all you got to do to change something is disconnect and lay on, and they will not interchange. So when you get ready to put it back together, just tighten them and hook them back up. So without further ado, let's get on with the program, and we'll get this done. Stay with me. Let me get set up. Now, I said we're going to move the sticks in. All right, that's good. We're going to remove this secondary, but we're going to go ahead and remove the bolts first. So we're going to start right here. Remove the outer one. I'm going to remove the 2 inner ones. And that uses 7/16. These are the original size, original bolts. Now the additional bolts that I installed, because this particular mower, as you all are probably familiar with, it's got a body lift kit on it. So we're going to remove those extended bolts. Now then, they're out of the way. But we're going to be very careful because on our body lift kit, we don't want to move any of the parts so that they fall and we lose them. Then we'd have to make them all over again. Don't want to do that. So what we're going to do here, we're going to take them very carefully, and we're going to slide all the body panel lifts over to here, and we're going to pick them up, and I'll show those to you real quickly. All this is 1-inch square tubing. This is some 5/16 inch Teflon. And as you can see, if I remove that, the body automatically wants to go home to its normal height. And the reason why we have it on there is because now the body's sitting on those big old tires. Big old tires, good. body touching them, bad. Okay, so I'll tell you what, let me stop this for a second. I'm going to get some rubber gloves, keep the fuel off my hands. That way, you know, all the honeys around here won't have to shy away from me. So let me get some rubber gloves, we'll pull this off. Be right back. Okay, so now we have the rubber gloves, which I had to pull off in order to be able to hook up the microphone because I couldn't feel the wire stuffed down the back of my shirt. And since this is the first time we've tried doing this, actually it's the second, but I didn't have this particular nice microphone then. And this is only a $3 one, so it's not that nice. But anyway, it's a lot nicer than I've had. Anyway, it's just for testing purposes only. If it works really well, one of these days we might get a really good one. So let's see. We're going to go ahead now. We've got our gloves on. We're going to remove this, put it right over here. I don't want to do that. Put that right there. Now, unscrew the gas cap. Let's see, do y'all need more light? If so, I've got a 12-volt light here. It's LED. And it should give you enough light to see what we're doing here without creating a problem for the, is it any better? Looks like it, okay. So now you're going to pull this up. Inside the tank is this little retainer right here. All right, that hangs down in the gasoline, so you want to hurry up and get that back on there because you don't need that fume in your... This is all there is to this. But first, I really do need to disconnect this wire. So I'm going to lay this right here. Leave this on top, like that. Disconnect the wire that I mentioned earlier. Okay. And there's your fender right there, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry, there are ladies that watch this for some reason. I'm not sure why. I guess it could be because of my devilishly handsome appearance, probably. Maybe not. I'm not sure if that's it or not. If it is, bless you ladies, you really got bad visions, all I can tell you. Okay, now we're going to put that back on because we still have, it's got gasoline in it because I drove it in. Oh yeah, down here I see about 3 inches, so we still got to pull a lot of gasoline out of this. So probably we will hook a pump over here and pump out as much fuel as possible before we remove this tank. Now, next thing we're going to do is probably answer the phone, but we're also going to disconnect the positive ground and both cables on this battery actually. So bear with me, we'll get that done. And I'll go answer the phone because y'all keep calling. So I'm going to show you something real quickly. I'm going to replace these factory cadmium plated bolts and nuts. They're on both the positive and negative, along with their cadmium plated star washers because they have rusted and causing, well, the corrosion connection between the lead terminal and this metal is causing it to corrode, and we're going to make sure by replacing it with stainless steel that that problem goes away. Okay, so this is an excellent opportunity while you start getting this down to the bare lawnmower to do any service you may need to do. So we're going to service the battery real well. We're going to make sure that everything's clean. And there is some cleaning I need to do, as you can see. And we'll get you some close-ups of various things as we go along. So without further ado, let's get on with the program here, boys and girls. Now, body lift kit also consists of raising the fuel tank. So we had to do that. And let's see here real quickly. Can't remember if I put a nut on the bottom or not. No, I did not. I did the nut on the bottom or end of the frame. So we'll remove these two real quickly. And I also use this as a grounding point right there too. So you might bear in mind you can use this as a grounding point. You don't want to lose like your socket stuff either. So, all right, let me stop this and cover my socket. All right, we'll get on with the program. We'll quit talking. extra fuel shut off just laying around. Never heard a thing. All this is a vent right here. And y'all have probably seen the videos where I've brought the vent here, if you can see right over here. Vent comes up and this level with the vent hole here, so that not only will it allow more fuel in the tank, also on hillsides and such, you don't have to worry about fuel rolling out if you're overfilled, or even if you're not. If it's a really steep hill, you don't have to worry about fuel coming out and flooding down on hot exhaust. So that's a good thing. Don't do it at home just because I did it. Don't mean you have to be a fool too. Sound like Street Outlaws, didn't it? Okay, so that's unhooked. Now, alright, let's go to the other side. Get some more stuff disconnected. I think I had the recorder off. Well, I popped these screws off this fender. Sorry about that. Now then, let's get in here and get this mount right here loose. By the way, more modifications and additions and upgrades you make on your mower, the more there is to do when you disassemble it and to reassemble it. But the nice part is you have all these modifications and upgrades that makes it so much nicer to operate your mower. And even though it's a little aggravating to take apart and put it back together, it's a whole lot nicer when you're operating this thing than it was when it came from the factory. Factory was just an old snoozer mower, and now you can get in here, boy, you can do all kinds of things with this old mower now, and you won't get it run over when it's out on the road. People will see you. And now that tank will come out of there. And we really don't want it out other than just to empty it and get it ready to drill holes in, because we want to put it right back in here, get it all lined up, drill it, align everything, and then drill it, take it back out to clean it real well. So let me see if I can get that bolt right there completely out without having to take the reserve tank, the hydraulic reserve tank out, because you normally do. But I think I've done it once without doing that. So we're going to try it again. Just because we're that kind of guy. And remember, now we've got bigger bolts in there now too, so that ain't going to make it any easier. Look at there. I might replace them with some shorter bolts because they certainly don't need to be that long. Look at that. Lord have mercy. Thing's a foot long. Sort of like a hot dog. I don't want to lose my washers. So that's when you get out the old big magnet over here. Do that. Normally I'll put, in a situation like this, I'll put bolts and stuff back so that I don't have to look for them. But we're working in a small area here anyway, so it's not a big deal. All this wiring is a big deal. I don't know who the fool was that put all this wiring in this mower, but okay, so there's a case in point is where you put the little bolt back on there for the ground. All right, now then, let's see if that tank don't want to move. Look at that. Look at there, boys and girls. Now, we need to get this vent right here disconnected. And I'll go find something to plug her off with, because we want it loose. We don't want it out of this point. We only want it loose right here. So let's be careful. Now that's plastic and it's really cold in here, so that might break. So tell me what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna turn off the video for a second, go get a little screwdriver. Starry, starry nights. Starry, starry nights. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Oh, she's probably still got a gallon and a half of gas in that sucker. Check it out, boys and girls. I don't know if you can see that. I can't see the monitor, so let me set this over here out of the way temporarily. Oh, looks like some cleaning we can do down in there. Yes, sirree. Alrighty. Okay. Now then, I'm going to take that thing and empty the tank. Okay, so the tank's outside. It's got soapy water in it. It's full as I can get it. Now over here is separated from this because of this raised area, but I've got this completely full. So now we're going to take this and we're going to put this little sucker right here by us. If you see what that is, that's a fire extinguisher. Not that it'll extinguish that gasoline, but alright. And she's walking on me, of course. Should have known to do that, huh? May have to drill it with a smaller drill bit first, which is normal. So let me grab one, we'll do that. Should have brought one to begin with. As you can see, it's getting dark out here, and which won't be far from now. But exploding gas tanks don't matter if it's dark or not. It just makes a better looking explosion, I guess. All right, we got water now, by golly. That's really what we want. We want water coming out instead of fumes. Okay. Now then, let's get to the serious stuff here. Now, there's going to be a lot of water coming out here in just a moment. We're getting where we want to be yet, getting closer all the time. All right. Just like that, we're through. And we brought the plug out with us, so that's what we want. Okay. Now, don't throw this away, because this material is usable for other things, so we'll keep that. Now then, we want to take this in the unit. We're going to pull all the safety equipment off of it, and we're going to drop it in the hole. If it don't fit, we're in trouble. Look at there. Slick as a whistle. I mean to tell you right now. Look at that. Almost looks like it belongs there, don't it? How about that? Now then, let's see. I think I got that clock to where I wanted. And pull this sucker out. Well, we don't want that on there. We'll put this to save that, get anything on it. On that, just back on here like that. Let's take this in the house. Now then, let's just make sure we've got this. These bolt holes are not, you got to find the way they match up. So I clocked it with this, with the top. So I need to figure that out real quickly. I'd like to roll this back this way some. Maybe what we can do is use that piece of material right there. Didn't like that too much, did it? Okay, let's see here. Those two align. That one don't. Those don't. Alright, after all that, there we go right there, boys and girls. Now then, so we know that's going to clock just fine. So now, let's see about drilling some holes for the up really well. It's getting dark out there, even with that light y'all looking at the tank with. So this might be something I'll need to do. In the daylight. You know, I am old, my eyes ain't that great. So what we're gonna do is we're going to go ahead and locate one of these puppies right here. Okay. Now let's make sure we've got enough meat for this thing. That would be seriously bad if we didn't. But my calculations is right. It looks like it ought to be perfecto. Oh, perfecto would be good. Y'all hear the ducks, or the geese rather? Alright. A little better centering on that thing. So far, so good. Okay. Now then, let's step it a little bit at a time here. How about that? Self-following drill bits. All right. Now, I'm gonna go get the gun. Haven't done it yet. So, here we go. We'll be back now then. We've got the nut, and this is the rivet nut screwed on here. If you can see that right there. So now we're going to take it, we're going to put it into the tank as far as she'll go. Then we're going to start squeezing it like that. Now then, that should be a good tight seal. How about that? Y'all like that, boys and girls? So what we'll do, before we'll drill the next ones, we'll put the gasket on like this, just like that. We'll put a bolt through there. You grab one. We'll put the bolt in right there. That's just slicker than snot right there, boys and girls. Now then, we'll line up the rest of our holes just like that. Then we'll drill them. So we're going to stop because it's getting too dark to really see down in there. So we're going to stop right here. And then we'll resume this when it gets warm tomorrow. And we'll get this thing knocked out, start reassembling. So, here we go. Put that right there. Okay, so here's where we are, boys and girls. We have located and we have drilled and installed 2 of our rivet nuts, and now we're about to install the other 3. And the good Lord's willing, the creek don't rise, they'll all be in the right place. Won't hold that against me if they're not, I hope. If not, we're going to need a fuel tank, aren't we? And I ain't going to be happy about that. Have to go making me a big old patch to put over that thing. Okay, so here we go. And somehow or another, since I bought those stainless steel, now you're going to put this right on here like this. You're going to screw this all the way up like that right there. Okay, now let's make sure we get all the ridge off that plastic, because we don't want that holding that up to cause a leak. Soapy water sure does make it hard to get that knife to cut. That knife is sharp. There. Didn't really want that to fall in there, but hey, you know how that is. Alright, I hope you can see this. I probably ought to tighten y'all up on that a little bit. Alright, it's sort of dark out here. It's 30 degrees or a little bit below. Wind's blowing about, I think they said 9 miles an hour out east, northeast, and it's really cold. I shouldn't be doing this outside. I should wait till it gets warmer. But had someone ask me how come I hadn't put any videos up in the last week and a half, 2 weeks. It's because I've been doing other things, other administrative things. By the way, we're going to cut this little ridge off right here, lower it just a little bit, just to make sure it's not causing a problem. Okay. Now, get the old rivet gun up here. We'll put one, you just force it in there, like that, and you squeeze your best you can until it's squeezed all it's going to squeeze. And you better clamp down on that, and you unscrew your stud, and voila, there you go. Now then, we'll put another one on there. Still am not happy with that. Maybe I ought to go sharpen my knife. Alright. This will be number 4. Number 4. Somebody needs to raise my tool bench here, jacket trailer for about 1.5 feet. That sure would help. Alright. There we go. I can already tell on some of those bigger rivet nuts, you're going to wish those things were hydraulic or double compound or something. It sure does feel like it'd be tough. Alright, now let's get the old and wrench here, Allen wrench. Get them started. It's going to be pretty, boys and girls. Plumb pretty. All right, if I just had 3 more, 3 more bolts, so I need to go find them. We'll try to get this thing finished up, get it emptied, get it tested for leaks first. We put a little air pressure in it. Get tested for leaks. May have to double gasket. Now, I hadn't got any kind of sealant on it. We just want to see how it's going to seal with just the bolts and the rubber gasket. And bear in mind, if this is the tank surface here, those rivet nuts flanges stick up slightly above the plane of the tank, so we may have to make a second gasket and with a cutout that falls down around that flange like that, so that it brings it up to flush, and then we'll put another gasket that's just the size of the hole for the screw on top of that, so that then the screw is just going through that top gasket, seals it all the way around. Okay, so I'm going to leave you right there. I'm going to find some more bolts. Be right back. Okay, I mentioned that I was going to have to purchase some more of these rivet nuts, as you can see here. Let's see if I can get this handful of rivet nuts where you can see them. These have all been deployed and didn't grab. Now they don't have any striations around the sides, and I'll show you one, show you some that do. And I just got these in, and plus they also have a little rubber seal around them that's really nice. Let me see if I can get you one out where you can see it. You probably can't hear over these 4 heaters going in here. I'm pretty warm other than my fingers are freezing. But that's part of working out in the shop when it's really cold out. And it is really cold. Alright, I'm going to first hold it this way. Alright. And as you can see, it has the striations around it. Also has the little rubber seal. Pretty neat. That's what I just put in there. I hope we won't have to replace these others, because getting them out, I hate to be grinding around this tank. But if we have to, we'll replace them with these. And if in fact those don't function as well as I would like for them to in regards to holding and leak prevention, then I have an alternative here. I'm a little concerned about the length of them. However, they are blind hole rivet nuts, whereas the I shouldn't have to worry about putting that back in there for you right now, but we'll come back to that. These have a closed end, and I'm not going to open them until I have to use them, but as you can see, there's no hole in that end, but there is in this end. And the way that operates is it continue as you put it through the metal and you squeeze it, then it creates a seal on the top and the bottom, but it has no through hole, so liquids can't come up through that nut, which is a great idea. Now, I'm going to go ahead and point the camera down to the fuel tank, and we're going to clock this. It'll only go one way, so we're going to clock this to the hole locations we chose, and see now if we can bolt this down. So let me lower the camera for you. Alright, there you are. Don't y'all go nowhere. I did all this for you guys. So here we go. Clocking it right there. You see, it looks like you can see it just fine. Alright. Now that's the one that we just installed. We have to make sure it's going to work, because the other 4 seem to be just fine. Although those are really cheap Chinese joints, but that's what came in the kit. And I was going to use them up before purchasing new ones or replacements. And they seem to be doing just fine so far. They probably aren't the top of the line for even their manufacturer, but they seem to be just fine. And I wish you could see this. It's pulling the tank up to the flange of the sending unit, which is what you want. Now, this is not going to be the permanent installation. We're just doing this temporarily to make sure that this is what we want. And then once I'm sure that that's exactly how I want it, then I'll go ahead and O-ring both the screw, and I'll put a new O-ring as well on the bottom side, because the gaskets here are going to seal pretty much, I would think. And even that we're not going to trust just to its own accord. We're going to also use a gasoline sealer to make sure it's sealed this way, as well as around each of the bolt heads, so that we have both gaskets, O-rings, and sealer. Because your butt sitting on top of this tank while you're mowing. So if one of, let's say I'm not too concerned about Max, But let's say one of you guys come by and wanted to demonstrate or take a ride on the mower and cut some grass while they're here. I would not want any harm to come to any of you guys, so I would naturally install this as though a friend and, more importantly, a family member were going to be sitting on it. So, and this thing feels good. By the way, I mentioned earlier in one of the segments where this seam comes together right here. From about here to here, this material in this tank is really thick. So that's the reason why these other rivet nuts did not come up, is because that's at an angle like this. I mean, that's really exaggerated. It's not that much of an arc, but that was part of the problem. So we don't want to over tighten these. These are only 1024 bolts, stainless steel bolts going into aluminum threads. So we're going to call that tight, and I really don't expect that to seal 100% right there, but you know what, I was going to show you something else too. And it does have a bit of a leak, which is fine. It's not much, and it could be that I just don't have them pulled down 100%. But I was going to show you some things I made here to help those, and I'll probably, when I take this off, I'll probably take these 5 rivet nuts off, grind them out, replace them, because my intention all along was to put a ring below this so that the bolt goes through the plastic, through another piece of plastic underneath to help pull this up evenly all the way around, and then seal it. So now what I want to do is figure out which one of these places, and I'll put some Kleenex around this to find the wet location. That way I'll know what to tighten up. But this is what I took this out of. This is a, we can use it for a lot of things. This is really meant to be a wood tie for trusses or whatever you want to use them for. But it's a wood tie to tie 2 pieces or more of wood together. So I cut those out, and I made some little really thin gaskets, or washers, in order for those to fit down underneath the tank. This went through the tank and then through this, and I made those things fit really tight, as you can see, so that when this pulls up, then it would pull this plastic up against it. And I only wanted to do it on that one, since that's the only one giving me trouble. Alright, so I'm going to cut, and I'm going to get this thing where it doesn't leak, and I'll show you what I've used on it when I get through. And next thing I want to do is make sure it's sealed so that it is in good shape. And after that's done, then I'm going to take it apart again and make that new ring, and I'll show you how to do the whole thing. This is going to be a really long video. I apologize. I'll probably speed up a whole lot of it just so that you don't have to sit through all my talking. But I always like to make sure you have plenty of details on how I did what I did. Okay, so now we are going to put this Permatex gasket sealer on here, which is for fuel resistant applications. And as you can see, I've already put it around. It's really thin, runs really easily. So I was going to show you me putting it on. Here's the problem. It is so fluid, so thin, that it's wanting to run out. So I'm just barely putting any pressure on it. That way it can dry overnight, and I can come back and I can tighten up all the bolts. And I may even at that time, I do need to try to level this a little bit further, I may even at that time attempt to use some thread sealer in the nuts, which shouldn't be necessary, but just in case. And if necessary, I may put a little flat gasket underneath the bolts. So anyway, at this time, all I want this to do is create a contact point between the sealer and the gasket, so that it's got a nice flat surface, and as I bring it up to specs, then it will, of course, squeeze that cedar a little tighter. And I did have to, I got a little greedy, and I did have to replace one of the original rivet nuts because I over-tightened it, over-crimped it. But that was my fault, not the rivet nuts. So anyway, that's where we're at with that. So idea is whoa, boys and girls, don't get too carried away with this stuff. Don't get in a big hurry. Allow it to do its job, and I think you'll have a real nice outcome. This right here was going to go underneath it, and the rivet nuts tighten up through these to pull this plastic up. I'm going to try this without it. That's just a thing to make me feel better. So basically where I'm at is I'm at the point that I want this to just seal up around between the gasket and the tank, and it looks like it's going to do a real nice job. So I don't like cedar sticking out, so we'll try to get up the excess because that looks tacky. But anyway, okay, now keep from boring you, which I already have. I've already submarined this end of the tank underneath the wires and the fender. I've also put the body raise extensions under the tank, between the frame and the tank, and those are rubber foot grips like you see right here, that you put on steps and things like that. So I'm now putting in the fuse, and this is a real problem. So I went ahead and worked forward toward that. The tank is not level, it's actually about a 1/16 of a bubble down that direction. As you can see, I used a level here to check the frame's level. And I did that originally to make sure that the gasoline would have a tendency to give more vent here, put more fuel that direction. Works really well because it's vented high on both sides, allows the fuel to come back over to this vented area and it vents to the atmosphere. So it allows a little more fuel in the tank. Okay, now, as you see, we still have to wire it, which we'll do. But right now, we're really interested in making sure that we get this fuse circuitry secured so it doesn't move around and can't get up inside, or not inside the seat, but beside this hole and get attacked by the seat as it moves up now. So we've got 2 of the holes already in. It's got 4. We're not going to use one of them because when I drilled it, it sort of goes into the curve of this cross member, and it doesn't really, sort of is close to the battery, so we don't really want to use that any longer. And I just never pulled it back out. But here we go. We're going to pull this last little locating screwdriver out. Little tiny, this one happens to be a flat blade. The other 2 were Phillips. And we use those first. Actually use the flat first and the Phillips then to help locate the other 2, which were a little more difficult. So as soon as we get this thing started in the hole, which is going to be difficult because it goes through the riser block as well as down into the frame. So let's see what we got here. Ooh, lucky. Okay, I like that so far. Let's see if I can make myself like the next 2. And you don't want to do this at home, it's no fun. No, I'm just kidding. Depends on your state of mind, I suppose. And we all know I ain't got much more of those. But I will tell you this, and I've told you this before, the more modifications, the more upgrades you install on your mower, the more you have to work around to disassemble and reassemble it. That's what we want. Okay. So that looks good. We are going to go ahead and test the other two one more time, just to make certain they got a good stud pull on them. All right, good enough. We don't strip them out. Alrighty. Now, next thing we're going to do, we're going to use the correct amount of spacers here and mount. Go ahead and solidify the tank to the frame. So this is going to go here, and then I got to get the riser block that goes underneath this to raise it up because of the body lift kit, and then we'll mount both the tank and the starter solenoid at the same time. So let me gather up the parts and we'll get with it. Okay, now I'm going to use the old tried and true method of doing some washer stacking here. And all that's for is to make sure we have plenty of tension on this bracket and the fuel tank. So I've got the stack of washers over this side. I probably, after I get all this back together, I may replace that, I meant to anyway, with one of these 1-inch square tubing spacers. And since it worked out really well with the stacked washers, I never did change it. So let's go ahead. I've got this in place for you. I've got this body spacer in place, which allows the fuel tank to come up. This clamps to the frame through this body spacer. Also, it holds the starter solenoid, as you should be able to see there, I think. And then you'll use a half-inch. Let's use an extension. Actually, those are 7/16. Let's go ahead and put a little tension on them. Basically, all we're going to do is just start them really well. And I got so many wires added to this thing that you have to sort of work your way through all of them. And that's good. It's okay. This 4 bolt I use as a ground point also. So, okay. Let's go ahead and tighten this up. I'm going to start it by hand first and see how tight that makes this. Seems to be just fine. So we probably won't stack these washers this time, but just to make sure, let's go ahead and give it a little extra pressure there. Really don't want it going anywhere. We don't want the tank to touch the tire. As you can see, I think there, let me see if I can see that. I really can't see if you can see that or not. Oh, can't see much when the camera falls, can you? Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. Mountain just collapsed, didn't it? All right, try that. Well, I did a lot of talking. You didn't get a lot of seeing. All right. So what I've done is we've used a body spacer here, 2 bolts through that holds down the starter solenoid and the fuel tank retainer. On this side, it's got a 1-inch spacer here and a 1-inch spacer over here. I just got through putting some fender washers on top. That's just to give it a little extra friction. And I've hand started this bolt over here on the back, which I'm sure you can't see from there. So what we're going to do, it's ready to go ahead and tighten down. So what we're going to do now is tighten that bolt and then check it. Okay. Now, once the other side's tight, and I want to make sure I hold this ground so it doesn't get round around the bolt. All right. Now then, let's check that. It's pretty good. So now we're going to move the other side, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to add the U-shaped retainer to the tank, put the bolts in, spacers, and then we're going to hook up the vent lines, the fuel lines, and then we'll start hooking up the sending unit, and then we'll test it with fluid in it to make sure, because we did not test the sender before installation. Bad on me. Okay, so I'm not going to film this because it's the same thing as over here. Clamp, bolts, hook up hoses, hook up fuel lines, both sides, vent lines, and then we'll get to demonstrating how to hook up the wiring, how I'm going to wire this. I'm going to wire the positive first to a fuse here on this fuse block. I have 2 circuits left. So I'm going to put 1 circuit to the fuel sender, and it will protect both the fuel sender and the fuel gauge. So, be back in just a minute. Okay, so here's where we at. Notice, key on, voltmeter on, our meter is on. I know you can't see it, but I'll bring you over later. And then, with the key on, the fuel gauge, of course, is on, but it's only lit, if you can see this, with the lights on. So that's pretty neat, huh? Okay. So let me pop you off the tripod, and we'll carry over there and show you. Then I'm going to clean it all up, put it all back together, and show you the finished product. Okay, stay tuned. Okay, here we go. Keys on. Now there's no fuel in it, so it's not going to register anything. But as you can see, it does have the voltmeter. Our meter is now flashing, which is telling you to turn the key off because you're just using up hours. And when you turn on the lights, now you have lights here. Lights, you have lights. There we go. Okay, let me get this all cleaned up, tools put away, and we'll get back and show you the final product with fuel in it. Ha ha ha! Look at here, we're back. Now then, let's see if you can see this in the dark. So we've got key on, which now we've got, can you even see that? I believe you can. Tilt this down just a tad. I believe you can see the blue light, which is your voltmeter. And here's the fuel tank, fuel gauge. If you flip the lights on, now you can see the fuel gauge, I believe. Look at there, look at there, look at there. So let me turn these lights down so I'll figure out how to do that. Is that better? There you go. There's some pure darkness. Blue light. Let me cover it up. See if you can see the red light. My finger may be in your way. Oh, it's the light. You can't really tell it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and turn on the overhead lights. And I'm going to turn the light on so I don't kill myself in the dark. Although I brought this light to make sure it didn't. So the dark thing didn't work. Okay, my problem. My apologies. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to pull you off the turn this off first. Pull you off the tripod and do your little walk around here. All right, give me just a moment. We'll get you going here. Now remember, you're going to be shaking, maybe not stirred, so just hang with me here for just a second. All right, here we go. It's not a good transition there, okay? Alrighty, so now here's what we're going to do. We're going to turn on the ignition, which then gives the fuel gauge power. It powers the voltmeter and the hour meter. But I don't want the lights on unless the lights are on. So there's the lights, and there is the fuel gauge light. So let me get around here, turn off the lights, turn on the lights. So there you go. That's what we want you to see. So there's the old girl, the old world land speed record holder, all back together one more time. and hopefully you got something out of this. This is the extremely long step-by-step version. Oh, by the way, this is probably where the new Class 3 hitch is going to be hooked up in the front, just so that you know what's coming up soon. And right over there is part of it. Now this is not actually going to stick out this far on this machine, because that ain't a good thing. So there you go, boys and girls. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it. Be sure to like, subscribe, and smash that notification button so that you know when we got new stuff coming out. I'm going to make 2 versions of this movie. This one's extremely long, step-by-step. I'm also going to make an abridged version that's just and it's a done deal. So if you don't want to watch the whole thing, I'm not even going to put time steps in this one. I'm just going to let her rip for the people that wants to know every little step you need to do that deal right there. And I will show you one more time under the seat. That's what the sending unit completed looks like. Ain't that pretty? So I guess I could tell you the wiring circuit on this thing, the way it works. The fuel gauge has 4 wires. It has a red, which is hot, that will go to the orange side of the ignition, or whatever your hot is, only when it's on. The blue, which is ground, is going to go to a ground circuit. I picked up the ground underneath the dash. It has an orange, which is going to my light. If you want your light to come on all the time, you take it to the orange wire along with the red wire to the hot only when the ignition key is on. And that'll give you light and fuel gauge at the same time. And then it has a black wire which goes right over here, and it connects right down there. I don't know if you can see that. Move the light while I go too. So there's a black and there's a brown and a black wire, or a brown and a blue. The blue goes to ground on the sending unit. The brown goes to the black, which comes over here to the black on the fuel gauge. And that's your whole entire installation right there. So again, we appreciate you guys coming by Maxs Garaj Mahal, and as we always say, y'all come back and see us now. You hear? Maxs Garaj Mahal.